I thought I knew everything about Jenna. 3 years together, 6 months engaged, and a wedding planned for November. But sitting in my small Denver office staring at that engagement ring on my desk, I realized how wrong I was. The night she came home crying about morning sickness should have been the happiest moment of our lives. Instead, it became the moment everything shattered. We had not been together in 2 months because of my work trip to San Francisco. The math did not add up, and deep down I think I already knew the truth before she even said the words. Before I tell you how everything fell apart, I want to know where you are watching this from. Drop your city in the comments below, and if you have ever trusted someone completely only to have that trust shattered, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story gets darker before it gets better. Let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Ezra. I am 28 years old, and I work as a software engineer at a tech startup here in Denver. Life was good. I was making $55,000 a year, driving a new Honda Civic, and living in a decent 2-bedroom apartment in the city. Everything felt stable, and I thought my future was set. Jenna was 30, a third-grade teacher at a local public elementary school. We met 3 years ago at an art gallery opening downtown. She was looking at a painting of the Rocky Mountains, and I made some awkward comment about how the artist got the colors wrong. She laughed, and we spent the next 2 hours talking about everything from hiking trails to our favorite childhood memories. She was warm, funny, and easy to be around. My family loved her immediately. My mom, Martha, is 55 and works as a nurse at the hospital. She and Jenna bonded over their shared love of baking. My dad, Robert, is 58, a retired mechanical engineer who taught me everything about responsibility and honor. He treated Jenna like the daughter he never had. My younger sister, Sarah, who is 25 and in medical school, called Jenna her future sister, even before I proposed. We were all one big happy family. I proposed to Jenna 6 months ago on top of Pikes Peak during a weekend trip. She cried, said yes, and we started planning a November wedding. Everything was perfect, or at least that is what I believed. In July, my company sent me to San Francisco for a big client project. It was supposed to last 2 months, and I would be back by early September. The first week apart, Jenna called me every night. We talked about wedding plans, about how much we missed each other, about our future. Everything seemed normal. By the second week, things started to shift. Jenna became busier. Her responses to my texts came later. Sometimes she would not answer my calls until the next morning. When I asked if everything was okay, she said she was just swamped with end-of-year school activities. I believed her. I trusted her completely. The third week, she told me she needed some space to think about the wedding. She said planning was stressful, and she felt overwhelmed. I got worried, but I thought it was normal pre-wedding anxiety. I told her I loved her and that we would figure it out together when I got home. She seemed relieved. Then during the fourth week, something changed again. Jenna suddenly became affectionate. She sent me long texts about how much she missed me and could not wait for me to come home. She said she was being silly and that she was ready to dive back into wedding planning. I felt relieved. I thought we had moved past whatever rough patch we were going through. I flew back to Denver on a Sunday evening in early September. I was exhausted from the flight, but I was excited to see Jenna. When I walked into our apartment, she was sitting on the couch. She looked pale, and her eyes were red like she had been crying. I dropped my bags and sat next to her, asking what was wrong. Dinner that night was silent. Jenna barely touched her food. She just pushed it around her plate with her fork staring down like she was somewhere else entirely. I tried to make conversation, but every attempt fell flat. The tension in the room was suffocating. After dinner, I started cleaning up the dishes when I heard her crying behind me. I turned around, and she was standing in the doorway with tears streaming down her face. My heart dropped. I walked over and asked her what was happening. She looked at me and said, "I need to tell you something." I told her to sit down, that whatever it was, we would get through it together. She sat on the couch, her hands shaking. Then she said the words that would change everything. "I have been having morning sickness for 2 weeks. I took a test. I am pregnant." For a split second, I felt pure joy. I smiled, pulled her into a hug, and said, "We are going to be parents." But she did not hug me back. She just cried harder. That is when the reality started to sink in. I pulled away and looked at her. My mind started racing. We had not been together in 2 months. I was in San Francisco the entire time. I felt my chest tighten as I asked her, "Jenna, when did this happen?" She did not answer. She just stared at the floor, her body shaking with sobs. I asked again, my voice trembling. "We have not been together in 2 months. How can you be pregnant?" The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. Finally, she whispered, "I made a mistake." I felt like the walls were closing in. I asked her to explain, and she started talking, her words coming out in broken sentences between sobs. She told me about Dylan. He was her ex-boyfriend from 5 years ago. They dated for 2 years before breaking up, and she had not spoken to him since. But in mid-July, right after I left for San Francisco, Dylan reached out to her. He said he wanted to meet up for closure. He said he had been thinking about their relationship and wanted to apologize for how things ended. Jenna agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. They talked about old times, about the mistakes they made, about how they had both grown. One meeting turned into 2, then 3. She said she felt lonely while I was gone and Dylan was there to listen. He made her feel heard. One night in late July, Dylan invited her to see a house he was renovating. He was a contractor, and he wanted to show her his work. She went. And that night, she said it just happened. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I could barely breathe. I asked her how many times. She hesitated, then said 3 times. Over 2 weeks. I stood up and walked to the other side of the room. I could not look at her. I asked if she loved him. She said, "I do not know. I am confused. But I know I do not want to lose you." I turned around and looked at her. She was still crying, but all I felt was anger and betrayal. I asked her about the baby. She said she was sure it was Dylan's based on the timing. I tried to process everything. My fiancée had cheated on me multiple times with her ex. She was pregnant with his child. And now she was sitting in our apartment crying, asking me not to leave her. Then she said something that made everything even worse. I asked her why she was telling me this now. She could have hidden it. She could have waited until after the wedding, and I might never have known. Jenna took a deep breath and explained. Dylan did not want the baby. When she told him she was pregnant, he told her it was her problem. He refused to take any responsibility. She was scared. She did not know what to do. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Maybe you could raise the baby as ours." I stared at her in disbelief. "You want me to pretend this child is mine?" She nodded, wiping her tears. She said she had looked into it. "If we got married before the baby was born, I would automatically be listed as the legal father in Colorado. Even if we divorced later, I would be responsible for child support." She said she was not trying to trap me. She just needed security for the baby. But as she kept talking, I realized this was not just a confession. This was a plan. She had thought this through. She had calculated every step. I asked her if Dylan told her to do this. She admitted that Dylan had suggested if she married someone else, she would have better financial stability. I felt sick. This was not just about infidelity. This was fraud. This was a deliberate attempt to manipulate me into taking responsibility for another man's child. I told her to get out. She started begging. "Please, Ezra, I have nowhere to go." I said, "You should have thought about that before you slept with your ex and planned to trap me." She cried and pleaded, but I did not care anymore. I opened the door and told her to leave. She packed a bag with some clothes and walked out into the night. I closed the door behind her and stood there in silence, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was cold, almost unrecognizable. "How could you do this to Jenna?" I was confused. "What are you talking about?" "She told us everything. You cheated on her with someone in San Francisco." I felt the ground drop out from under me. "That is not true. She is the one who cheated." My mom did not believe me. "Jenna is pregnant, Ezra. She came to our house last night crying. She said you blamed her for your affair." I tried to explain, but she hung up on me. I immediately called my sister Sarah. She was just as cold. "I cannot believe you would hurt someone as sweet as Jenna." I tried to tell her my side of the story, but she would not listen. I realized what had happened. Jenna had gone to my family and told them a completely different version of events. She had painted me as the cheater, the liar, the villain. I spent the rest of Monday trying to reach my family, but no one would answer my calls. By Monday afternoon, I knew I had to go to their house and explain everything in person. I drove to my parents' house that evening. My dad answered the door. His face was red with anger. Before I could say a word, he yelled, "You are not my son." I tried to explain. "Dad, please listen. Jenna cheated on me. The baby is not mine. He called me a liar and a coward. He said I got her pregnant, and now I was trying to blame her." I pulled out my phone to show him the text messages between Jenna and me, the evidence of my time in San Francisco. But he knocked my phone out of my hand. "I do not want to see your fabricated evidence." I told him I could prove everything. I was in San Francisco for 2 months straight. I showed him my flight records, my work emails, but he would not listen. "Jenna said you came back secretly one weekend. She has proof." I was stunned. Jenna had created an entire false narrative complete with fake evidence. My dad was so angry he was shaking. Then, in a moment I will never forget, he shoved me hard toward the door. I stumbled backward and hit my head on the porch column. Pain exploded across my forehead. I felt blood running down my face. My dad stood there breathing heavily and said, "Get out of my house. You are no longer my son. Do not ever come back." My mom stood inside crying but silent. My sister looked at me with disgust. I touched my forehead and saw blood on my fingers. I turned and walked back to my car, my head spinning from both the physical pain and the emotional devastation. I drove home in a daze. I sat in my apartment that night holding a towel to my bleeding forehead and realized I had lost everything. My fiancé, my family, my sense of who I was. The next morning, after cleaning up my wound, I sat down and forced myself to think clearly. I could not let this destroy me. I needed to fight back, not with anger, but with truth. I called a family law attorney named Gregory Walsh. I explained everything that had happened. Gregory listened carefully and then said, "You need evidence. Lots of it." I spent the next 2 days gathering every piece of proof I could find. I printed out my plane tickets showing I flew to San Francisco on July 10th and did not return until September 8th. I got records from my hotel showing I checked in every single night for 2 months. I pulled up credit card statements showing purchases in California throughout July and August. I collected work emails with timestamps. I got screenshots of my phone's GPS location history, proving I was in San Francisco the entire time. Gregory reviewed everything and said, "This is solid. No court would believe you were in Denver during that time." He also advised me to request a DNA test once the baby was born to prove I was not the father. I agreed. I also gave him screenshots of the text messages between Jenna and me, especially from the night she confessed. Gregory sent an official letter to Jenna. The letter stated that I had undeniable proof I could not be the father. It demanded she retract all false statements about me. It warned that if she continued to lie, I would sue her for defamation and fraud. Jenna did not respond for a week. Then her lawyer, a cheap attorney she found online, contacted Gregory. They tried to negotiate. If I did not sue, Jenna would stop talking about me. Gregory refused. My client wants a public retraction and an apology to his family. Jenna refused. So Gregory filed a civil lawsuit against her for defamation. During the legal process, Gregory hired a private investigator named Paula Brooks. Paula started digging into Jenna and Dylan's lives. What she found was disturbing. Dylan had a history of domestic violence in a previous relationship. Paula also discovered that Jenna and Dylan were still in contact regularly. In fact, after Jenna left my apartment, she moved in with Dylan. Paula managed to get photos of Jenna and Dylan together at an obstetrics clinic. She also recorded a conversation between Jenna and a friend at a coffee shop. In the recording, Jenna admitted, "I thought Ezra would just accept it. He is so nice, I thought he would raise the baby. But he is smarter than I thought." Paula also found evidence that Jenna had tried to fabricate proof of me returning to Denver by editing photos and creating fake records. But the evidence was sloppy and easy to disprove. Gregory brought all of this evidence to me. I looked through it and felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I was right, but it did not make the betrayal hurt any less. I decided to put together a complete package of evidence and send it to my parents. I included copies of everything: flight records, hotel receipts, credit card statements, GPS history, the recording of Jenna's conversation, photos of her with Dylan, and I included a handwritten letter. In the letter I wrote, "Mom, I know you do not want to believe me, but I am still your son. I would never lie to you about something this serious. Please look at the evidence with an open mind. I love you, and I hope one day you can forgive yourself for not believing me when I needed you most." I mailed the package on a Thursday. My mom received it on Friday afternoon. She told me later that she almost did not open it, but curiosity got the better of her. She sat down at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. Inside, she found everything: the documents, the photos, the recording, the letter. She read my letter first. Her hands were shaking. Then she went through each piece of evidence one by one. When my dad came home from his afternoon walk, she showed him everything. They sat together in silence for over an hour looking at every document. They realized I had been telling the truth all along. My dad felt the weight of what he had done. He had pushed me. He had hurt me. He had disowned his own son without even listening. My mom called my sister. The three of them sat together and reviewed everything again. Sarah started crying. "We have been so terrible to him. They tried calling me. I did not answer. They sent text messages apologizing. I did not respond. I was not ready." That Saturday night, my dad drove to my apartment. I heard the knock on the door and looked through the peephole. I saw him standing there looking older and more tired than I had ever seen him. I opened the door but did not invite him in. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Son, I am so sorry. I was wrong. I should have listened to you." I stood there, my arms crossed, and said, "You assaulted me, Dad. You called me a liar. You disowned me." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I know, I have no excuse. I failed you as a father." My mom and sister pulled up in the driveway. They got out of the car and walked up to the door. All three of them stood there looking broken and desperate. My mom said we were blinded. Please give us a chance to make it right. I looked at the three people who were supposed to have my back no matter what. The three people who chose to believe a stranger over their own blood. I felt anger, sadness, and exhaustion all at once. I said I needed you to believe me. I needed my family. But you chose her over me. My dad said we know, and we will regret it for the rest of our lives. But please do not shut us out forever. I took a deep breath and said I need time. This is not something that can be fixed with an apology. My dad nodded. He respected my decision. They turned and walked back to the car. I watched them drive away, then closed the door. I stood in my empty apartment and realized that even though I had won the battle for truth, the war for healing was just beginning. 2 months passed. I threw myself into my work. My performance at the company improved so much that I got promoted to senior engineer with a raise. The extra money helped, but it did not fill the emptiness I felt. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Helen Frost. She helped me work through the feelings of betrayal, not just from Jenna, but from my family. She taught me that trust is not something that can be demanded. It has to be earned, even from family. I joined a rock climbing club that met every weekend in the Rocky Mountains. Climbing gave me a sense of control and accomplishment. I met new people who knew nothing about my past. One guy, Marcus, became a good friend. He was 35, an accountant, and had gone through a messy divorce. We bonded over our shared experiences of betrayal and recovery. I started writing in a journal every night. At first it was just angry rants, but over time it became a place where I could process my emotions and track my healing. I wrote about what I learned. I learned that betrayal teaches you who people really are. I learned that standing up for the truth, even when it costs you everything, is worth it. I learned that loving yourself has to come before trusting others. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Jenna gave birth in March. She had a baby boy. Dylan initially refused to acknowledge the child, so Jenna had to take him to court. A DNA test confirmed he was the father. The court ordered him to pay $300 a month in child support. Jenna and Dylan were not together. She was living with her parents in the suburbs, raising the baby on her own. When I heard this, I did not feel happy or victorious. I just felt sad for the innocent child born into such a messy situation. Thanksgiving came around 4 months after the confrontation with my family. I had been thinking a lot about forgiveness, not because they deserved it, but because I realized holding on to anger was only hurting me. I called my mom and told her I would come to Thanksgiving dinner. She cried on the phone and thanked me over and over. I made it clear that this did not mean everything was okay. It just meant I was willing to try. The dinner was awkward at first. We sat around the table in uncomfortable silence. My dad had enrolled in anger management classes and had written me a formal apology letter. My mom had found a family therapist and suggested we all go together. Sarah admitted she had been too quick to judge me without seeking the truth. I told them I am here, but things will never be the same. Trust has to be rebuilt, and that takes time. My dad looked at me and said, "I understand. I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I am sorry." We did not hug. We did not have a tearful reunion. It was just a small first step toward healing. I knew the relationship with my family would never be what it was before. But maybe we could build something new, something based on honesty and respect instead of blind loyalty. As I look back on everything that happened, I see it clearly now. Betrayal does not just come from strangers or romantic partners. It can come from the people closest to you. But how you respond to that betrayal defines who you are. I could have let the anger consume me. I could have cut everyone out of my life and lived in bitterness. But I chose to stand up for the truth, even when it meant facing my entire family alone. I chose to protect myself legally and emotionally. And eventually, I chose to open the door just a crack to the possibility of healing. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending the hurt never happened. It means releasing yourself from the prison of anger so you can move forward. I do not hate Jenna anymore. I just feel sorry for the choices she made and the life she has to live with those consequences. As for my family, we are taking it one day at a time. Some days are better than others. My dad and I go to therapy together once a month. My mom sends me recipes and checks in on me without being overbearing. Sarah and I text about random things, slowly rebuilding our sibling bond. I have learned that trust is fragile. It takes years to build and seconds to destroy. But sometimes the broken pieces can be put back together in a new way. And maybe, just maybe, that new shape is stronger than the original. I still do not know if my family and I will ever be truly close again. But I know one thing for sure. I am no longer the man who would let anyone, not even family, make me doubt my own truth. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to stand up for your truth when everyone around you refused to believe you? How did you handle it? Drop your answer in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up for yourself is always worth it, no matter the cost. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that your truth matters and you are stronger than you think. Take care of yourself, and remember, healing is not a straight line, but every step forward counts.